Disclaimer: the views and opinions expressed in the video are those of the individual and do not necessarily reflect the views of the creators, hosts, or publishers of the video. The video should not be taken as conclusive proof of any phenomenon or event. In the previous episode, we discussed how Mr. A was left in awe after he laid his eyes on the 3 flying saucers that were parked behind the general in the hangar. Let us now continue with this story. Mr. A is able to provide a description of the flying saucer's shape, which resembles that of a badminton shuttlecock. So imagine a badminton shuttlecock. The top is round, like a half circle, a hemisphere shape. Then, at the bottom, it starts to get fat and wide. And at the bottom, it's flat, completely flat, which left Mr. A stunned. He said that these 3 flying saucers were parked there. They had no landing gear. They were just hovering above the ground. They were about 1 or 2 feet tall and floating there, like the vehicles in Star Wars. Then, the general continued to introduce the 3 flying saucers, which they called fluxliners. Flux refers to the fluctuation of the wave in the electromagnetic field. So these 3 flying saucers may have something to do with magnetic or electrical currents. They have been testing these fluxliners for a long time and they need support from various manufacturers to make them more affordable and mass-producible, as well as to add more functionality. Then, the general went to the largest flying saucer and introduced its internal structure. He invited the managers of Boeing and McDonnell Douglas to see if they could cooperate in military applications. Mr. A inspected the 3 flying saucers carefully, especially their internal structures. He confirmed that these flying saucers were made entirely of earthly materials and could be repaired. The outer shell was made of stainless steel, copper wires and plates, superconductors, fiber optics, and gas pipes. They had obviously been flying for at least 10 years, with dents and scratches on the surface, and there is a layer of white paint on them, and some of the paint is peeling off. The general compared them to vintage cars or used cars, and Mr. A agreed that they must have been flying for a long time. When the others started to slowly leave, Mr. A was walking quickly. Then, he followed the manager and they both walked away from the hangar. 1 week later, Mark called Mr. A and asked him, "Was the aviation exhibition exciting? Did you find any business opportunities?" At that moment, Mr. A did not say anything and remained silent for a while before responding to Mark. "I noticed something that I should not have seen on that day." Mark said it was impossible. "In fact, we were all from the Air Force, and we all had security clearance. Meaning that we were all trusted by the government with many secrets. We had been to the production lines of military factories and had seen things that we were not supposed to see." Mr. A then said, "Let's not talk about this on the phone. Let's meet for lunch and I will tell you everything." Mr. A arranged to meet with Mark for lunch and began to tell him about what had happened on the day he saw something unusual. He showed Mark a sketch he drew and explained that he had seen a flying saucer. He described the internal structure he saw inside the saucer, based on his memory and experience. Mr. A detailed that the saucer resembled a badminton shuttlecock, with a half-sphere on top and a cylindrical metal structure running through the center of the saucer from top to bottom. He explained that this metal cylinder was very thick and long and ran through the entire saucer. The 4 seats in the saucer were arranged around the cylinder and were secured with screws and welding. Mr. A emphasized that this design was a complete departure from conventional aircraft, where the pilot and co-pilot sit side by side and face forward. In the flying saucer, there was a central pillar with 4 seats arranged around it, and the people sitting in these seats could not see each other. And he said, the outer shell and armor of this flying saucer is all made of stainless steel armor, which is completely sealed and without windows. However, at the top of the saucer's hemisphere, there are some protruding circular areas with camera lenses. Since the saucer has no windows and there is no visible display screen inside, how do the pilots operate it? At that time, in 1988, there may have already been VR glasses. The 4 people may have been wearing VR glasses, which allowed them to connect to the cameras and see outside. So, at the top of the sphere-shaped flying saucer, in the center of the saucer, there are many oxygen tanks installed on some brackets on a copper plate. These oxygen tanks are placed along the original axis of the saucer, and they completely seal the saucer. There is also an entrance, which is a thick circular door with a handle that can be turned to open it. This door resembles that of a submarine. This completely subverts the conventional concept of flight and airplanes. Mr. A could only do his best to describe the saucer and use his limited drawing skills to depict its appearance. Based on his description and his experience of designing mechanical drawings for over a decade, Mark drew a more detailed and neat blueprint of the saucer. However, after seeing the saucer's interior at the aviation exhibition, both Mr. A and Mark had the same question. How does this saucer take off and what is its source of power? They could not see any engine, exhaust pipe or jet nozzle. Yet the saucer was floating in the air. Although they could explain most of the saucer's features, there were still some unexplainable aspects. Mr. A and Mark concluded that they could draw the saucer's appearance, but they could not explain how it worked without an engine, generator, or jet nozzle. The story will continue in the next episode. Please stay tuned.